want to ask some questions and give members of the panel a chance to ask some questions. Mr. Ratzenberger, I'm well aware of the work that you have done for some time in trying to impress upon Americans today the importance of teaching hands-on skills at an early age. And I know that many of us up here, probably from an earlier generation, when I was in high school, industrial arts was a required course. You know, we had to take a mower apart and put it back together and learn other things like that. And today, I don't think those courses are even options for a lot of people. So tell me why you think it's important that we expose young people today, children at an early age, to that kind of hands-on learning.
As we know that the brain is formed between the ages of 0 and 5 years old. And throughout history, all the great tinkerers that have moved mankind forward, from Da Vinci, Thomas Edison, Gutenberg, Steve Jobs, Benjamin Franklin, they all tinkered as children. They didn't go to school. Thomas Edison didn't go to school and say, I want to learn how to make a light bulb. He, in fact, only had 3 months of formal education. Most of his time was hanging around a shipyard in Lake Erie, learning how to tinker, learning how to form things, shape things, fix things, invent things. Same thing with Steve Jobs. I actually had this conversation before he passed away, and he liked working on cars with his dad. So the more interested you get people into using their hands, Leonardo da Vinci was an illegitimate child that was ignored throughout his childhood. He hung around a farm. That's where he became Leonardo da Vinci. So by the time they get to be 18 years old and graduate from wherever they're graduating from, if they don't have the seed planted in them of using their hands and shaping and forming things, and we can also eliminate those trophies, the high self-esteem trophies that we're so fond of giving out. Well, high self-esteem comes from making things. You make something from scratch. You draw it, you shape it, you build it. That's self-esteem, because you can look at it 30 years later. I always do when I show my kids who are growing now, and since they were little, I'd point out a roof of a building that I put up during one particularly gruesome New England winter. And every time we'd drive by, I say, yeah, I put the roof on that. And when they were younger, they'd say, oh, gee, Dad, that's great, that's great. Well, once they got older, they went, yeah, we know, you put the roof on. But still, it's something you can point at. It's self-esteem, and that's where it comes from. It never comes from handing out a trophy for coming in 11th. You have to put your hand to something useful, and that's what brought us to the dance. Just so, dance with the one who brought you. And it wasn't theory that brought us here. It's somebody who knew how to use tools.
Thank you. Mr. Colonel Cartney, you spoke about the fact that technology is a force multiplier, which does not decrease the number of people that are needed, but it instead enables people to do more. Could you discuss in a bit more detail the impact that new technology is having on the skills gap and how Lake Area Tech is working to ensure that its students are prepared for this workplace environment?
Yes, sir. Almost any field that you look, technology is having a great impact. But even if you look at, for example, manufacturing, when they put a robot in the line, typically that robot isn't put in the line to make the same number of items they've made previously when a person was there. It's put in the line because it does it more effectively, it does it faster, and higher quality. And so, but as soon as you put that person or replace that person on the line with a robot, now you need somebody to take care, that can maintain the robot, that can program the robot, and in addition, back at another plant, has to build that robot. So there's been concerns that technology is going to allow us to do more with less. And my response to that is always, you never do more with less, you do more with something different. And that's what technology is doing. But it's not reducing the number of workers that we need, it's changing the types of workers that we need.
You sort of got at this, and a number of you did. The whole notion that kids nowadays come up with this idea that they have to have a 4-year degree, and sometimes there's a stigma attached to not doing that. How do you deal in student recruitment for Lake Area Tech, for example, with that? And it seems to me at least one of the big bubbles we're going to face in the future is a student loan debt bubble, because more and more kids today are taking on so much debt, and it's going to be very, very hard and take a really long time to pay it back. So is there an argument to be made, not only that there are really good paying jobs out there, and your placement rate, as I pointed out earlier, is 99%, which is really remarkable, but also an argument to be made that you can get good jobs in the economy that are pay significantly higher than average wages, and also come out without a huge amount of student debt that you might otherwise have if you went to a college, a four-year institution. How do you deal with that perception out there that people think, at least some people think, that they need to have that four-year degree?
Yes, sir. Well, in fact, we have a great group of recruiters, first and foremost, that they get out and they get into the high schools, they get into the, even to the middle schools and talk to the students, talk to the parents. But some of the big things that people need to realize is, when you talk about the averages and you look at what you're going to make with a four-year degree, say as a business major, and then you look at the average, what's the average welder make? There probably will be a slight edge for the person getting the business degree. The problem is if your inert natural skills are to be a welder, you're going to be a great welder and you're going to have an income that's extremely high, and where you would be maybe a mediocre business person, and you would be on the lower end of that scale. So a lot of times people need to understand that they need to really look at what it is they want to do in life and where their skills are at before they decide a pathway. And that's why we focus on placement rather than graduation. As when our students are coming in, we talk about what do you want to be, not what degree do you want. Because for a high school student, that's rather abstract for them. So we combat it in a number of ways. The biggest thing that we're now working on is we need assistance from industry, because a lot of perception is that the jobs that people are preparing for, they have an image of what they were 30, 40 years ago. And so now with the new, we need to re-image these occupations, because manufacturing environment isn't what it was 30 years ago.
Senator Nelson.